If you have not subscribed to Alboa Cinema, this is where you will get everything. So subscribe. Subscribe.
So now in the last, I think it was 2 weeks ago, so there was there was a lot of excitement about, there was this thing, this extinct wolf, they call it the dire wolf. Now the talk was that they brought it back from extinction, and I was very interested. Please forgive the noise. There's a lot of noise, children like playing. There was a lot of claims that they brought back this animal from extinction. I was very curious. How did you do this? So there's some people that I watch on the internet who I trust their methodology, and how they think. So I went to, and this one of the people here is this channel called Metatron. It does a lot of like history stuff and whatnot, and it's actually a pretty good channel if you can go. It's in an Italian who is interested in medieval history and things like that. I think European mostly, but I think I watched a bit of this, and I think he had the best take. But also we're going to watch a few of other people to see whether actually this happened or what actually was happening, other than, what was really promoted as they brought this back from extinction. Sawa. So just give me a moment and we watch this one. Sawa.
Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and a few of you have asked me to talk about something that has been a little bit of a hot news, shall we say. Alright, so if you've been around the internet for the last 3 days, and I mean, of course you have, you will notice that one of the most popular top stories is the idea that ancient dire wolves have been brought back from the dead. In other words, not only YouTube channels and TikTok accounts and whatnot have been speaking about this, but BBC News, ABC News, Time Magazine, CNN, USA Today, and the list goes on. Now, if you're not familiar with what the dire wolf is exactly, I will leave a link to this fantastic article that I found and read through that explains and gives us context. So let's have a look. Dire wolves are considered to be one of the...
So this is the part you just listen, you'll do this part, then I'll give commentary now on more relevant. This is just now giving you a preamble of what these things are. These dire wolves.
The most common and widespread large carnivores in the Pleistocene America, yet relatively little is known about their evolution or extinction. Here, to reconstruct the evolutionary history of dire wolves, we sequenced 5 genomes from subfossils remains dating from 13,000 to more than 50,000 years ago. So, in other words, what we're talking about is an ancient prehistoric animal that went extinct either 12 or 10,000 years ago, just like a lot of other prehistoric animals, such as the, woolly mammoth. And we'll get back to that one later. Man, they looked awesome, though. Now, the claims that these extinct animals have been brought back come specifically...
Woolly mammoths would probably be much cooler looking than elephants.
specifically from a biotech company called Colossal Science. So let's have a look at their official website, colossal.com, to examine the claim. Okay, so this is their official website so that you can see Colossal Laboratories and Biosciences. And massive here we see the introduction to what it is that is their goal that they're trying to achieve, which is de-extinction. We read, extinction is a colossal problem facing the world.
Extinction, as they say, I think over 90% of all the species that have ever existed have already died off. So it's a process that is going on. Who will remain in the end? Is it the viruses? Is it humans? Is it a merger?
I mean, that's the understatement of the millennia, considering the fact that the majority of the species that have ever lived on this planet have gone extinct. So yeah, it is a colossal problem, I suppose. But we read, and Colossal is the company that's going to fix it. It sounds a lot like marketing, but we'll see. They have a good PR department, I suppose. Combining the science of genetics with the business of discovery. I would like to underline this word here, because business, indeed, this is, since this company has received hundreds of millions of funding, not
hundreds of millions of dollars. I think, before it goes on, this is what I already like. This is kind of a familiar thing that there's usually like these astronomical amounts of money that seem to be put into projects that don't really act like the aim of the project doesn't feel hundreds $300 million, kind of, although they spend that on movies on Hollywood. Okay, but that's another story. The thing is that I think the main thing what I read is that they're trying to bring back the animals that went extinct. It's actually, I think, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense unless you want to create a Jurassic Park for tourism, and I think that's too much money for that. And I also think the main thing is that they're trying to find out genetic information and mutations on how it can affect how they do things now, medicines, genetic engineering of all sorts, animals, what. I think that's the real reason such entities exist. Whether for better or worse, that's why I think they exist. So anyway,
that there isn't necessarily anything wrong with that. It's good when science gets funding, but it is important to underline that there is a lot of money involved in here, which can help us understand the nature of these claims. Now,
motivation.
Of course, before we continue, for full transparency, I would like to underline that even though I am interested in the prehistoric period as one of the things that I'm interested in, even though I'm more of a history guy, prehistory is like before, but I am interested in it. I've studied the prehistoric period, although usually I study it more for the weapons and armor rather than the extinction of animals and how to bring them back using genomic sequencing and whatnot. But clearly, I'm not a geneticist. Now, given I have looked into what experts say before making this video, because I do know that people come here and do ask me because they know that I'm very thorough in my investigations.
Yes,
but I do want you to keep in mind that I am not a specialist in the field. In fact, I don't know anything about genetics and the like. Still, I do believe that we can.
You see, such disclaimers are important because even when you're talking about gene splicing, just genetic engineering, it's kind of just umbrella terms to cover this subject we know very little about. How do they actually splice? How do they find out the genome? How? We don't know those details. But because of the results we get from such projects, we believe the process is how they tell us. So as in, this is one of those things where you just like, okay, fine, that's how it's done. Because yes, the result. Because if somebody tells you this is how I make a phone, and then the phone is there, then it's possible they are lying and they're not giving you all the information, but the result is there. This is the least you can do. Is like, okay, the result is there.
Judgment on whether or not the claim is appropriate.
Yes.
Continuing, business of discovery. We endeavor to jumpstart nature's ancestral heartbeat. Whoever is writing this is a pro. To see the woolly mammoth thunder upon tundra once again, to advance the economies of biology and healing through genetics, to make
I think that's the main thing there. To advance the economies of biology and healing through genetics. Pharmaceuticals in less flowery language. Pharmaceuticals.
Humanity more human, and to reawaken the.
Who are you to make? What do you mean humanity more human? How do you make humanity more? The hubris of these scientists sometimes. The kind of self-importance. Like.
Lost wilds on Earth, so we and our planet can breathe easier.
What is that claim? It's a PR statement. Please, when you read such things that, so our planet can breathe easier, what do they actually mean? Find out what that statement means. Because it's just vague statements that they can just peg on anything to make it sound nice, but already you can tell them. I do find this kind of things, although I'm not totally against, they make me extremely uneasy because they a few years ago, went through a thing they were doing at the place, and then the thing went and masks vaccine. You remember that? Yeah, that's what such things bring sometimes. But they also bring medicine and other things, improvement in health methods, supplements, vitukaizo. So I don't know.
Interesting statistics is one of those things that I think we may have heard, all of us, either at school or maybe watching a documentary, but it's just one of those things that you never really think about, but when you do stop to think, it is mind-blowing. So according to leading scientists, 30,000 species per year on average are being driven to extinction. 6 per
I
hour,
always wonder how
150 per
they
day, up to 55,000 per year. That is insane. Now, obviously, this
I always wonder how they do those calculations, because they don't know all species. So how do you know that there are this many? I guess it's projections, but it's still the methodology. I'm lost in the weeds there, because it just feels a lot of these things are just said, just for the whatever reason. Often it's for some end game. Yeah, we need more money to do this thing.
also includes bugs, or I don't know if it even includes microscopic species, very likely. I mean, 30,000. But still, that's a lot. Every year. 6 per hour. So by the time I'm done with a Heroes of Might and Magic game, there are like 18 species that are gone. It's crazy. The World Animal Foundation predicts that up to 1/2 of all species could become extinct by 2050. Yeah, I don't know if I believe this one, to be honest. I think
Yeah, it's those things. The earth will become dry here until the sea level will rise. It's everybody's making these claims that never really come true, but nobody really questions. They're just random statements made, or experts say, oh, scientists say. But we found out, at least in the last few years, that a lot of that, anyway, at least for me it's been a number of years, but for most people it's like, yeah, these people are actually full of it. But anyway, tuendelee na dire wolf.
I looked into this one a little bit. Seems like they're overselling it. Like maybe not actually become extinct, but more likely, because it's just 25 years, it's more likely that there will be species that may face extinction. That's a different wording. And wording is
Yes.
indeed a problem as we continue investigating
The
this.
UN
Then
has
they
done
continue to
this,
tell us about
or
like
blah, blah.
amphibians, they tell us about both animal and plant species, which of course it is all important, and it's something, I mean, ecosphere, protection of the environment, all these things are important, 100%. Plus this guy looks
Please, I'm not very big on all this crap, by the way. It's because I know that a lot of it is actually bullshit. There is a lot of good, sensible things, but then there's a lot of nonsense that's been attached to it. These days, it's just a cash cow for a lot of people who want to move goats from America to Kenya, and we have many of them here.
legit. Look at that beard. Yeah, look, it's even called a billion-dollar startup. So as I was saying, there's a lot of money involved, which is one of the reasons why I think, even though they may not lack in the research department, it seems like they do get results and things work. They do excellent research, but they do lack a little bit on when it comes to, in my opinion, their marketing campaigns. Not because they're not effective, they clearly are, they get a lot of money, but simply because I think it would be better if you made statements that are a little more precise, if you will,
That's
to
the
avoid
thing.
ambiguity.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is
Yeah.
this, going back to this article, which I believe there are, there's a lot of people involved in this, but some of these are scientists that belong, if I didn't misunderstand that, to colossal science. So as they speak about the research, this is very pertinent, so to speak. So we are talking about the dire wolf, and we read, our results indicate that although they were similar morphologically to the extant grey wolf, dire wolves were a highly divergent lineage that split from living canids around 5.7 million years ago. I'm going to get back to this in a second, but let me finish. In contrast to numerous examples of hybridization across Canidae, there's no evidence for gene flow between dire wolves and neither North American grey wolves or coyotes. Or
But by the way, guys, when they're talking about this and this astronomically long period of time, you have to realize this is like best guess scenario, in my opinion, looking at the methodology and what they're able to extract as evidence. So a lot of this is just because they have very little like evidence from those periods that will give you a definitive this or that. So because a lot of I think if you're talking 5 billion years, there's no genetic material that's present, that's alive, that's remained. It's all calcified. It's become rock, so it can't. You can't do anything with it, at least not with the current technology. I know how humans are trying. At some point in the future, someone say, I've extracted this from this $10 million, 10 million year old fossil. I know it's coming. I can feel it. That's why they're dropping such things, mdogo mdogo. But you see, just to have scale, a lot of the times don't hold as fact a lot of what you hear. It's a lot of it is trying to extrapolate from the little evidence they have, mostly fossils.
All right, so the reason why the grey wolf is important in this case is because that's what they used in order to bring back the dire wolves to life. So
you understand. Anyway,
before we keep reading and checking out these details, one thing that I would like to say to someone who wants a sort of too long didn't read answer, did they actually bring back the extinct prehistorical dire wolf to life? No.
That's bottom line. They did not. We are going to listen on. There's an explanation to it, but it's more like genetic engineering of some a species that's already there, using this kind of the genetic information or coding of that, whatever you've been able to extract from whatever fossil they were talking about. So whatever they're able to sequence, they use that to affect the offspring that's been put on current grey wolves. So it's a grey wolf whose genes have been tweaked to mirror some of the characteristics of what genes they could extract and sequence from that genetic material, your dire wolf. I remember my biology when I'm bad, but
what they did is that they created a new species, a very...
By the way, I did get an A in biology. I don't mess around. I understand these things. It's easy for me to understand biology, I found. It was quite easy when in high school.
Very cute species, I'll give him that. I mean, look at this, which is basically still a grey wolf, but a grey wolf that they modified genetically to look...
That is what I was telling you. They've modified a grey wolf by tweaking the genes of the grey wolf to reflect whatever material they found on the grey wolf fossilized material. Was it fossilized? I think they found one that they could extract. So it wasn't like millions of, it was like a few thousand years old or something like that.
More like a dire wolf. So this little new type of grey wolf, they named in Remus, of course they did. I think they named them Romulus and Remus, which I do appreciate. I very much appreciate the reference.
I like the way he pronounces over there. It's like he pronounces them exactly as they should, because they're from it is Italian and they're from Italy. So a lot of, when you hear I say Romulus, it's not that, it's Romulus. Ni kama sisi tu Kiswahili, you know what I'm saying? You pronounce
the
like
founders of Rome, you know, because of the she-wolf and whatnot. That's top notch. Loved that. Really liked it. And he is adorable, but he's not a dire wolf. Is it technically possible to eventually study and replicate the genomes to a point that they will be able to bring back completely from the dead? For what I could read, probably not, but they can bring back, I mean, they might get better, and so they could bring back an animal or engineer an animal that is very similar, not only to the dire wolf in this case, but to the mammoth. So I imagine it would be like a bigger elephant with fur, so they can genetically turn on those genes that stop growing that sort of fur, thick fur that we always associate with mammoths. I guess that's what they're doing. Now,
so that's basically what I explain. So what they're doing is they map the genetic code of the closest relative to that extinct animal, and then they would use this the animal that's there now with, if they're able to get full genetic material and sequence from this other, and be able to effect as closely as possible to what this represents on this current, the one that's going to carry the baby, and that's going to actually give birth to this so-called new species. So I just think it's tweaking what's already there using the material or information from the past.
Now,
That's it.
I
I don't know how helpful that is currently. I think the old animals, if they're, I think there'll be a lot of different reactions to the current environments. Even I know like even bacteria and other microbes have changed. The experience have been different. The industrialization, don't know what that has done. We don't know so much, but these people, I guess that's why they are able to build a lot, because the experimentation. You can destroy the world. Okay, what if we don't? Kind of. I don't know, but for me, I know it's for pharmaceutical reasons. So this is just extra commentary, depending on what our guy here says. Metatron.
Watched a few videos about this. I will put some videos in the description that I think are excellent, very exhaustive when it comes to explanations for the technicalities that I might misunderstand or misinterpret, since again it's not my field, and so I don't want to go into too deeply into that. But yes, the claim is exaggerated, and as you can see, there is a massive difference between the dire wolves that went extinct, as we read, 10,000 years ago, and the grey wolf, because they split 5.7 million years ago. That is a lot of time, and a massive gap between the two species. Now, however you want to look at it, whatever title they gave time here that we are reading, The Return of the Dire Wolf, is clickbait. And we read, Romulus and Remus are doing what puppies do, chasing, tussling, nipping, nuzzling. Yeah, I love that. But there is something very unpuppy-like about the snowy white 6 months old, their size for starters. At their young age, they already measure nearly 4 feet long, which is one of the characteristics that I was telling you about. They're still grey wolves, but they are a new species, and now they've got characteristics that make them more similar to the dire wolf, one of which, as you can see, is their size.
Big,
Man, how big are these gonna be when they're fully grown? Tip the scales at 80 pounds and could grow to 6 feet and 150 pounds. Goodness gracious, I do want to see that. Then there is their behavior, the angelic exuberance puppies exhibit in the presence of humans, throttling up for hugs, belly rubs, kisses is completely absent. Now this is fascinating.
But I think you can engineer that out also. So I don't know if that's the exact thing, or it's because the expression of that gene is when they were not very close with humans or in the same habitat. I don't know, but or they really didn't like them, and the humans have had some torrid times together in evolution.
But I would like to know if it's also the case with grey wolves, or is it only a case once you turn on certain genes that now make them more similar to the dire wolf? I wonder. So no belly rubs. Man, my Pomeranian is going to be upset. They keep their distance, retreating if a person approaches. Even one of the handlers who raised them from birth can get only so close before Romulus and Remus flinch and retreat. That does sound like ancient Rome, to be honest, although ancient Romans wouldn't retreat. They would go for frontal assault. This isn't domestic canine behavior. This is wild lupine behavior. There you go. The pups are wolves. Splendid. Not only that, they are dire wolves, which means they have cause to be lonely. And again, you see, they are stating that they're dire wolves. The reason why they are stating that is because indeed the company does make these statements, they repeat them, but they're not dire wolves. They cannot be dire wolves.
Exactly, they're not. Like, just by the nature of the process that they came to be, they're not. It's just a grey wolf with a few genes engineered to express themselves as dire wolves, which they got the code. I have to keep on. In biology,
literally, they're grey wolves that look more like dire wolves. The dire wolf once roamed an American range that extended as far south as Venezuela and as far north as Canada. Man, that is insane. But not a single one has been seen in over 10,000 years, and that is correct. When the species went extinct, plenty of dire wolf remain have been discovered across the Americas, however, and that presented an opportunity for a company named Colossal Biosciences. And here is you see the Time magazine, extinct, not anymore.
Is just the amount of money they've been able to raise? Is the reason why there's so much hype about it? And actually their PR messaging is what came across. It's not the accurate one. I'll leave that there. This is half the video. You can go to Metatron's channel there, and you can watch the rest of it. It's actually very interesting. The reason is that I heard this story, and in my head it was just playing. I thought I must say something, because the message was, oh, they've brought them back to life. No, they did not. No, this is not. I wanted to watch.
We, Colossal Biosciences, have brought dire wolves back from extinction. It's basically Game of Thrones. That is amazing. How did you do it?
We've taken a gray wolf genome, a gray wolf cell, which is already genetically 99.5% identical to dire wolves.
Yep.
And we've edited those cells at multiple places in its DNA sequence to contain the dire wolf version of the DNA.
You see, she's explained. I told you I got an A in biology. I told you, she's explained it the exact that way. They take the DNA and then use the information to, do that splicing thing. They're saying that they engineer it. That one.
That animal looks like a dire wolf, it will behave like a dire wolf, and it is a dire wolf.
Ta-da.
This is why I don't like scientists when they mix it with branding and PR and advertising, because that's what they're doing. I don't like that personally. I just find it so manipulative.
That is not a dire wolf. What? Of course it is. We said so. If you took a few genes from dire wolf bones and put them into a grey wolf genome, then at best you've got a hybrid that's mostly grey wolf. Oh, well, we didn't insert any actual dire wolf DNA into the grey wolves.
Yes.
What? Yeah, we looked at dire wolf DNA, and then we used that as kind of a blueprint for how to edit the grey wolf DNA.
Yeah, they edit. They grey wolf's DNA. There's nothing. It's like the info from the dire wolf, from whatever they were able to sequence. It's not that info to edit what's currently there in the grey wolf. It is a scam, I tell you. It's a full scam.
Okay, sure, but you altered the grey wolf genes to match those of a dire wolf, right? Yeah, mostly. Sometimes not. I mean, the gene that we think made dire wolves white would make a grey wolf deaf, so we used non-dire wolf DNA to make them white. But of the 20 changes we made to 14 genes, 15 were an exact dire wolf match. Animals in the genus Canis have around 20,000 protein coding genes, and you changed 14 of them? Yeah, but they're super closely related to dire wolves. Genetic evidence suggests that the last common ancestor of dire wolves and grey wolves lived around 5.7 million years ago. That would make them almost as distantly related as humans are from chimpanzees. I mean...
This kind of a funny explainer. Yeah, but it's basically telling you what I've been saying.
Technically, dire wolves aren't even wolves. They're in a different genus and they just look similar because they faced similar evolutionary pressures.
Yeah.
Also, I'm seeing lots of news articles about this, but where's the actual scientific paper describing your methodology? We named this one Khaleesi, like in Game of Thrones. Yeah, no, I get the theme. Look, if you claim to have achieved de-extinction, people are going to think you've actually cloned something from ancient DNA, or at least copied a whole genome.
Yeah.
Not just altered one species to kind of look like another. Your muscle wolves are still a cool example of genetic engineering. They're just not dire wolves.
Yep. That is what I was saying all along. That's what I was saying all along. Because let's not be falling for these scams. Although it is actually quite an admirable endeavor to to explore and do science, which you should be doing as Africans, which we don't do. But yeah, they did not bring back a 10,000-year-old extinct wolf. They just got some material, the genes, and they tried to make the current grey wolf express them through that genetic engineering things that they do. Sawa. I don't know what you think about such a video. You can comment, but after subscribing and waking notification, you can comment. Then you can like. Then you can share. Ambia kila mtu. And just before I leave, you know what I'm going to call? Just under here, we have our crowdfunding going on for Book of Ka Chapter X, which is basically the, how do we say? It is Kenya's first naitwaje cinematic universe. Mesikia? Mnaona huyu? Let me show you this person. Unaona kama huyu? Unaona kama huyu? Huyu anaitwa Queen Sheikh who is one of the characters of the Book of Ka Cinematic Universe. So these are the kind of characters. Let me show you another one. Okay, this is Nama right there. You can see that Nama. And then over there on the side, you can see you can contribute now. You can actually buy an early ticket. You can just donate to whatever. So we have an M-Pesa right there, till number for local Kenyans, and PayPal, sejo2001@gmail.com for foreigners and other people from abroad, from diaspora, everywhere. Ama vipi? What else? So that's that. Okay? Till next round 2.